The Falcons pulled off one of the most shocking upsets of the season on Sunday when they beat the Saints, and that leaves the football fans of Atlanta with just one question. Can they do it again versus Carolina this Sunday? We'll talk about it next on AJC Falcons News Now.
This is AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Here are your hosts, Brandon Adams and former Atlanta Falcon Chuck Smith.
Hello everybody, welcome to AJC Falcons News Now. My name is Brandon Adams. This is the former Atlanta Falcon Chuck Smith. We're sponsored by Miller Lite, the official beer of the Atlanta Falcons. And we're looking ahead to Atlanta on Sunday, a chance in Carolina against the Panthers to pull another shocking upset. This one wouldn't be quite as shocking as last week's was against the New Orleans Saints, one of the most surprising outcomes of the year in the National Football League, but it's certainly a chance against Carolina on Sunday to build something for the Falcons that would have seemed impossible as recently a couple of weeks ago, which is some positive momentum with a second division win. Is that asking too much for these Falcons on Sunday?
I'll say no, because this Falcons team, they're feeling good right now. And they're able to run the ball. But check this out, which is really interesting. This is one of the most anticipated Falcons game, really, when you look at it, in a long time because of what happened last week where they were able to knock off New Orleans. But I think the Falcons can do it. They got a good recipe right now for success. Run the ball, set up Matt Ryan for play action pass.
And obviously running the football is going to be made, you would think, more difficult by the absence of Devontae Freeman in this game. A lot of attention put on Hill there in that particular spot. So the injury equation does kind of factor into Atlanta's ability to run the football, especially knowing on the other side that's a big part of what Carolina wants to do because Christian McCaffrey, the Panthers running back, is arguably among the candidates for league MVP. This has been his team now for a while. Cam Newton not playing. They've ceded that position over to Kyle Allen. When you think of these divisional matchups in the past where it was Cam Newton versus Matt Ryan, that's not the new identity. That's not the era the Panthers are in anymore. This is the Christian McCaffrey era. And Atlanta running the ball some to match what McCaffrey does. You would think that's also one of the storylines in this game.
Well, you're exactly right. Atlanta, they have to run the ball, but this Falcons defense, they got to stop Christian McCaffrey. Yeah. Now, I admit, when he came out, I didn't know what he was going to be. I thought he might be a little small to run in between the tackles, but he's made me wrong completely. The Falcons will have to account for him. So Devondre Campbell, Deion Jones, they're going to be in KZ. They're going to be as important as anybody on this team because that's where the matchup goes. Yeah,
exactly right. Now, with that in mind, this week, Falcons coach Quinn talked about the challenge of facing Christian McCaffrey and what you have to do defensively to be able to deal with someone who brings what McCaffrey brings to the table. Here is what Quinn said this week about the Falcons running back.
He can be a game wrecker, and the reason being is he's got so many explosive plays. There's positions that don't have that many explosive plays. And so they're not just in the run game, they're not just in the pass game. And so that's what makes him so unique. There's running backs that have, 16, 20-yard runs and receivers that have obviously those kind. But here's a player that has both. And I don't know if it's 25 or 26 explosive plays by himself. That's pretty remarkable. And the most of the damage in the run is when he gets to the second level. Here's a 10-yard run that goes for 50. And in the pass game, here's a check down that goes for a long way. And so to me, that's a big deal because your tackling had better be on point. And that's with space, that's when he's at his very best. So he's really for 2 years almost taken almost all the snaps. So you can say what kind of toughness this player has, pass protection, running it, the whole thing. So he's a good one.
So obviously I said Falcons running back a minute ago. I meant to say Panthers running back when it comes to Christian McCaffrey. And you hear Quinn talking about what McCaffrey does when he gets to the second level. He's a little bit like this, what I think it was kind of a new age NFL running back, Alvin Kamara. New Orleans is a little bit like this as well. One of those athletic guys that's about more than just grinding out tough yards between the tackles. He really is about making guys miss. I thought what you said a moment ago about Deion Jones and so many of these guys have been brought in to be what Quinn used to like to talk about with the space tacklers. McCaffrey's a guy that wants to play in space there as well. So this really is the Quinn defense originally modeled after what the modern age of pro football is supposed to be about. McCaffrey, I believe, kind of a modern age NFL player. This really is an example of Atlanta trying to stop what the defense at one point in time was sort of built, designed to do. These athletic players playing in space, and that's what Christian McCaffrey is.
Yeah, McCaffrey, one of the things he also does well, he blocks well. I mean, when you look at him, he's small, does a good job. From the Falcons' defensive standpoint, what you're looking for, you got to run to the ball. This is one of those things that when you hear coaches, if you were to go to practice, you'll hear coaches yelling, run to the ball, 11 guys on, 11 hats on the ball, 11 hats on the ball. McCaffrey, when he gets on the second level, you got to have your defensive line chasing him because when he's dipping and dabbing and doing all the different things, you got to help. So what happens is you have your D-line running to the ball. Guy's electric. But one thing I will say, that kind of negates a guy like Christian McCaffrey. It's going to be a soggy surface. It's going to be, after, what's happening here in the, East Coast or whatever.
That's right, yeah.
I just think it's going to slow everybody down. But I think ultimately it's going to be in between the tackles, and I don't think it's going to be as much of passing in the air.
We will hear from Falcons quarterback Matt Ryan on the challenge posed by the Carolina Panthers defense in a moment. Let me get a few comments before we get there. Keith Cato on YouTube a moment ago says that he thinks that Brian Hill is going to emerge this weekend as that primary running back for the Falcons. And Keith's prediction on YouTube is that the Falcons are not going to miss Devontae Freeman in this game. I think we have seen some things from Hill that we like, and Hill having kind of a featured running back performance, the kind of thing that makes Falcons fans feel okay on Sunday. That, to me, certainly sounds like a reasonable prediction.
Well, Hill, what I like about him, what I saw last week, he's hungry.
Yeah.
And a lot of being successful in the National Football League. Look, there's not a big separation between him and Devontae Freeman. I'm going to tell you that. But somewhere along the line, what really separates them is Devontae came in, made some plays. Remember, Devontae was an underdog at one point, too, when it came to him coming here. But what I like in Hill, he's ready. He's coming out there. He's aggressive, and that's part of it. So, to me, he's hungry, and the Falcons' offensive line has built some confidence. But it's the young man. This is your opportunity, right? You want to change the narrative on your career? Take Devontae Freeman's position. Go out there and take it and ball out.
I think that's exactly right. Let me get a few more comments here on Facebook here for a moment. Charles Lloyd says, speaking of McCaffrey, Falcons better rise up to the occasion and stop McCaffrey in this game. Talking about keys to victory, Wilbur Bell says there ain't no keys to winning. Just play like you did last week. And
there are some keys.
Well, there are some keys. And we'll get into the sort of the defensive stuff a little bit later on, but just as a general thought, is it too much to ask that the Falcons could redo what they did a week ago? I mean, there's obviously going to be a thought when New Orleans maybe overlooking Atlanta, when Atlanta, having a week to kind of get ready for that game, an extra week to kind of get ready for that game, hated rival on the road. This was kind of a fluke performance. I mean, how much are you concerned that what went down for the Falcons against the Saints was an unrepeatable fluke?
Well, I think it's not unrepeatable. You see teams like a good example was last night.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh was on a winning streak. Cleveland, came out and basically whooped them.
Yeah.
So the Falcons can't repeat it because it's one of those things where it comes back to, I've been saying this forever. Is Julio Jones not a beast? Yes. Is Devondre Campbell, solid after last week? Can he cover tight ends? Do the Falcons defensive line, can Grady compete against their O-line? There are a lot of yeses. So if the Falcons play up to their potential, don't turn the ball over, you understand what I'm saying? It'd be real good if the other team only ran the ball 9 times like the Saints.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
There's some narratives in there that the Falcons can win.
Marcus Williams mentions Colin Kaepernick. We'll talk later on in the program about Kaepernick's scheduled workout in Atlanta on Saturday, kind of what that might mean from a Falcons standpoint and for the rest of the NFL. We will certainly do that here coming up in just a little bit. Myra Winfrey says, rise up, hashtag hate week part 2. And from your perspective as a Falcons player, now a lot of your career, some of your career anyway, was taking place in the old NFC West. Now we have the new days of the NFC South. From your perspective as a Falcon for life type situation, how do you compare the Falcons-Panthers rivalry to the Falcons-Saints rivalry, which we know is among the most intense in the NFL? What does Falcons-Panthers mean to you?
Well, it means a lot because when I was in the NFL, the Panthers, there was a time when I was in the NFL, there were no Panthers. Now, part of it is when the Panthers came into the NFL, they had like a draft. They basically took 2 players from every team. The Panthers were good real fast. They went to the NFC Championship. So, hey, we kind of resented it a little bit in the NFL. A lot of teams resented it because Jacksonville and Carolina, they got players. They built the team. Next they're really good. So when they got in the league, it was a fierce rivalry. When Kerry Collins at quarterback, they were good. When they had Blake Brockemeyer, it was bigger than New Orleans at the time. Then there's a little bit of time in there where it kind of faded. But when Mike Vick was here, Julius Peppers, the rivalry was fierce because both of those teams were really good.
Yeah.
So it's winning spurts, but like lately, it's not as much because the Saints and the Falcons has really kind of grown. But remember, when Carolina and Atlanta are good, there's a rivalry. But there are 2 eras: the Vick era and my early in my career, middle of my career, is when there was a big rivalry.
I think that's a good point. I think the Vic era is part of that. I think them having Cam Newton's been a part of that, as we said before. as an organization, Carolina's in the midst of redefining itself, which means how we think of the Falcons-Panthers rivalry will be redefined there as well. When it was Matt Ryan versus Cam Newton, you sort of knew what it was all about. Yeah. Now where it's about to be kind of something different. Michael Williams on Facebook says that he's never actually been all that worried about Carolina, and I guess to an extent I understand what you're thinking about in that regard, but when it comes to this particular game, this particular Sunday, I watched a lot of that game last week between Carolina at Green Bay in snowy conditions. I mean flurries, not like blizzard, but in somewhat snowy conditions. I know Carolina loses the game, but McCaffrey was on the goal line about to score when he just didn't quite get in on the last play of the game. I thought Carolina playing as tough as it did in a tremendously difficult road environment. I mean, the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field. In that situation, Carolina actually earned a little bit of my respect last weekend.
No question. Carolina, any given game, Carolina has the ability defensively to shut you down.
Yeah.
They got a pass rush. They can stop the run. But offensively, everything goes behind Christian McCaffrey. And to me, the quarterback, Kyle Allen, it's going to be really interesting how he handles this Falcons front. He's going to stay in the pocket. So this is a little different for the Falcons. They don't usually get guys that just stand there like a statue, right?
Yeah.
Well, Drew Brees did. He stepped up like a statue. But this team in Carolina, to me, is better than their record says they are. Because defensively, I mean, I think they lead the league in sacks.
Yeah.
It's going to be a great matchup for the Falcons offense.
I like this comment from Falcons Hawks Braves fan extraordinaire on YouTube. He says, Big Brother, which is the Falcons, about to smack up on Little Brother, the Panthers, once again. #GoFalcons. And if we're going to be honest here for a second, there are a couple of NFC South division rivals that can say something that Falcons fans can't say. New Orleans has won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Tampa has won a Super Bowl. The fact that Carolina has not been to a Super Bowl but hasn't won a Super Bowl, been to a couple of Super Bowls, not having won one, the fact that that's true, I do think gives Atlanta and the Atlanta fans a chance to say, okay, there's a certain level of trash talk that we can't return fire on with some of our division rivals, but Carolina we can. The fact that on YouTube it's called a little brother situation, I think for some Falcons fans they kind of relish that this is the division rival that you can think of as little brother. I'm sure Carolina Panthers fans wouldn't feel that way. Falcons fans want to say that on YouTube, and I kind of get where you're coming from on that because there's a degree to which Tampa's got a checkmate in a trash talk game. New Orleans got a checkmate in a trash talk game. They've got Lombardi trophies in their complex. Carolina doesn't. Carolina and Atlanta kind of the same boat when it comes to the Super Bowl appearances with the Super Bowl win. So this is a franchise that you feel like that you can kind of push around a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, you can. They are the little sisters. They're not even little brothers. This is Charlotte, North Carolina. And if I hear again, we've all heard it, Atlanta fans, let's be real. The first person you know from Carolina was the first thing they say about Charlotte. Man, Charlotte is Atlanta 20 years ago. If I don't hear that a million times, well, yeah, Charlotte, we're growing fast. So the facts remain, Atlanta is Atlanta.
Yeah.
But there's one thing you said that's really, really correct against New Orleans. Me and my wife talk about this all the time. Said there's one thing they got a Super Bowl. So they're always going to have something to say. Carolina, they have always been, and they will always be, unless they win a Super Bowl from a sports standpoint. But as a city, hey, man.
You said this last week. I think it's a really good point. I don't want to gloss over this.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons why the NFL, to me, got better when they realigned divisions. No disrespect to the old NFC West, and you know what it's like to win an NFC West. But when you redefine it as the NFC South and you put Atlanta, Carolina, New Orleans, and Tampa in the same division, it's not just a competition between the franchises, Bucks, Saints, Falcons, Panthers. It is a competition between the cities. I think that's such a good point. And you said last week that from your perspective, Atlanta is a better city than New Orleans, even if the Saints are a better team than the Falcons.
I'm sure Saints fans would say
feel
otherwise.
different.
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting deal here between Atlanta and Charlotte there as well. Charlotte's a city that didn't have professional sports when I was a kid. It does now. There's always been this sense that Atlanta's the bigger and better city, and people from Charlotte obviously feel different.
Yeah,
I'm not going to pretend they don't. But I think that's a really cool thing about the current NFC South rivalries. This is not just a Falcons-Panthers rivalry. This is a Charlotte up-and-coming city in the South against Atlanta, which has been established as a major metropolitan area now for decades. There's a little bit of a Charlotte-Atlanta rivalry going on here, too.
It is, but I never felt Tampa.
Yeah.
I don't feel Tampa. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, Tampa's just a wannabe Miami.
Yeah,
that's all. That's all. They're just a wannabe Miami.
I just don't hear a lot of people saying, man, I'm going down to Tampa. It's going to be a fun weekend.
Yeah.
When they go to New Orleans, Atlanta fans travel. When they go to Carolina, travel. I think one of the things that that's pretty cool about now the NFC South is that you can drive. So Falcon fans can really get to any of these stadiums, and drive.
Yeah.
And outside of New Orleans.
That's a good point.
Yeah, you can drive, but the thing about New Orleans, just look at it. It's just my opinion. I live here in Atlanta, but I just think it's a better city.
I like it.
I think it's a better city. So, but they just got basketball 2 years ago, man. Y'all ain't even grown up yet in New Orleans, man.
Well,
y'all just got the Pelicans.
The one thing that is a little bit grown up is that Panthers defense right now. It's a challenge for Atlanta to deal with on Sunday, at least according to Falcons quarterback Matt Ryan, who spoke on that subject this week. Here's what the Atlanta quarterback had to say.
They've been very good. I mean, I think they're leading the league in sacks. They've been physical in the front seven. They've got a number of different guys who can do it, rush the passer. They've got linebackers who get involved as well in terms of the rush. So very good at rushing the passer. We got to do a great job up front and stay in front of the chains on first and second down.
So obviously he knows what it's going to be like to deal with this Panthers defense. And it seems like for a long time we've been talking about, obviously, when you think about, Ron Rivera, this is a defensive-minded head coach. This is a guy who has successfully done something that Dan Quinn has decided he can't do, which is kind of call the defense, be the head coach at the same time. So a defensive-minded coach like Rivera, that's not a shot at Quinn. I'm just
you're
saying,
right.
yeah,
You're right.
Defensive-minded coach Rivera. Matt Ryan has done this game a gazillion times in his career, and with good reason. He's obviously got great respect for this Panthers defense.
Yeah, he does. And this team, when you think of the Panthers defense, you think of Luke Kuechly.
Yeah.
I mean, guy who's going to probably be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
I mean, they're fantastic. And now they've added a young gunner, Brian Burns, first rounder from Florida State, who's absolutely great.
Burns
now,
a
I'm
good
going to tell you, quiet as kept, Gerald McCoy, former Tampa Bay Buccaneer, has been the catalyst for this defense, him and Luke Kuechly. This is a tough defense. I mean, they got guys across the board. They're tough. And we're going to see how the Falcons handle this because Gerald McCoy, I kind of read some things this week. They want to turn into a slugfest. They want to see if the Falcons come there and throw hands with them. And we're going to see how that works out.
Well, along those lines, I want to read Isaiah Davis' comment on Facebook. And you and I have debated about this a million times before. Isaiah says, let's face it, we need to tank. I get that dub from the Saints, but why try to play for a berth when all we know we need a serious edge rusher like Chase Young? So, Isaiah, I am, and kind of have been right there with you, that to me a great draft pick would be better than anything else, especially given the unlikelihood of, or unlikeliness, whichever the right word is, of winning out the rest of the games this season. However, I'm going to say from a Falcons fan's perspective, and what I seemingly have heard from Falcons fans this week is, coming off the Saints win, as much fun as that was for everybody, it sounds like Atlanta fans are willing to give it another week, right? Okay, so you played way over what I thought the ceiling was for Atlanta last week against New Orleans. Can you come back and do that again on the road at Carolina? And if you can't, we need to have a serious conversation because this really was just a fluke a week ago. And too many wins are going to mess up your draft position. But for now, I'm willing to take a wait-and-see approach on that. I'm willing to say, you surprised me a week ago. Can you surprise me again this week? And I think a lot of Falcons fans seemingly are saying the same thing right now I didn't expect the Saints win, so I'm at least a little bit more curious at Carolina. I think it's really hard to do this 2 weeks in a row. I think Carolina in a number of ways is just not a good matchup for Atlanta, kind of any way you want to slice it. But I think taking a wait-and-see approach and not worrying about the draft, at least for this week, the best I can tell, although I respect Isaiah's comment here, the best that I can tell is most Falcons fans are kind of just content to just sort of see, can they surprise with another win again this Sunday?
I think they can, but as far as the tanking, it felt a lot better this week for Falcon fans. No matter what anyone can say, there was no one saying, man, dang, we should just tank. Because guess what? Matt Ryan's not going to tank. You got a quarterback that's not going to tank. So to me, for anybody can keep, letting that, stress you that we're not winning or we're winning, when we're winning, to me that's really wasted time from a conversation. You can want that. But also the Falcons, when it comes to the young, look, he's going to be the number one pick. And I'd be surprised if anyone passes on him because am I getting Tua? Nah, man, I'm not getting to it right now. But, I just think this. I think people are going to be surprised now, and I'm not, if Dan Quinn can figure out a way to win 6 games, 7 games, y'all going to be hearing about the brotherhood in another year. Well, just remember I said, if Dan Quinn, I'm going to tell you now, if Dan can get to 6 wins, get ready.
So that's kind of what Victor Vershawn Phillips brings up, the idea that Quinn could keep his job. And like for right now, I'm just kind of willing to push pause on that because honestly,
a lot can happen. Yeah, a lot can happen.
And I've made my case on this. I think the Falcons need wholesale changes from the top down. I think everyone needs to go. I think they need to totally clean house. But for now, I'm just sort of willing to push pause on that and let this season kind of play out. But as Victor brings up here, and as you mentioned there, if this does turn into a 6-10 situation, 5-11 situation, I don't know how you sell that through the offseason coming
won't.
back. It's a very tough sell.
It'll be a PR nightmare now. It'll be a PR nightmare, but the only thing is, I know transition, when you got a guy and you've built with him, you're comfortable with him, I understand. You know, and Arthur Blank seems to want to wait and give him time. But on the other end of the spectrum, you know, can you win, 4 more games? I don't know. But the Falcons have a tough match. And look, I personally think no matter what happens, whether they win 6 or they lose the rest of their games, I still think Dan Quinn's going to finish the season as the head coach. And I don't think Arthur Blank wants the narrative. And I ain't talking to Arthur. This is me just speculating that he doesn't want to add more negativity to the narrative. There's enough negative already built around the Falcons when it comes to their season. I just don't think he wants now all of a sudden we fired him, and every time he walks in the building, because no one right now people kind of back down about what him getting fired.
Yeah.
So no matter what, the expectations aren't anything right now.
So Victor Sean Phillips says, well, I got a shout out. Here's the thing y'all got to understand. Chuck and I both feel the same way about this. We want the show to be as interactive as possible. That's why we take as many comments as we do, including Corey Carter here, who's also weighing in there as well, says, I think we need to play the season trying to win every game until we are officially eliminated. After that, we develop, quote, younger talent. And I think that Corey brings a pretty good point. The whole notion of officially eliminated, like the Falcons, and Arthur Blank said this a couple of weeks ago, and this is, I'm willing to give them some rope on this, give them some leniency on this, is one of the reasons he cited for his patience with Quinn a couple of weeks ago is the division games were coming up. Well, guess what? The Falcons played a division game last Sunday, and lo and behold, they won the dadgum thing. So in this stretch of division games they're in right now, I'm willing to kind of say, as Corey's saying here, of, they are mathematically alive, not by a wide margin, but by a narrow sort of mathematical possibility.
Very small.
But as long as you're alive, as long as you got a chance, I'm just sort of willing to kind of let that go and see where it goes. And as I said before, be open to the possibility that Atlanta could surprise us again.
Why couldn't they? But again,
because they were 1-7.
No, I understand that, but they just showed you what a complete game can be. They just showed it. You saw what happens when you don't turn the ball over. You saw what happens when they run the ball. You saw what happened when the Falcons had protection. So to me, I'm not going to be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if they took a little run right here.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So here's a good answer. A good question for anyone. Are the Falcons? Let's look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Are the Falcons better than the Steelers when it comes to personnel? Yes.
You think
clearly, so? Steelers just won 4 in a row.
Yeah.
So when you look at some of the teams that we're talking about, I think the Falcons can. What was it? Chicago early in the year, won 4. We're on a roll. And as we continue to, I say this every week, how do we evaluate this team? Are we over-evaluating or are we right now under-evaluating?
Yeah.
I think right now we're under-evaluating the Falcons because of the start. Julio's still a dog. I'm going to say it again. Matt Ryan is still the former MVP. Now it's just do they play up to that potential? That's the reason why we're talking about coaching. The players are who they are.
All right, it's Chuck Smith, former Atlanta Falcon. My name is Brandon Adams. This is AJC Falcons News Now. It's sponsored by Miller Lite, the official beer of the Atlanta Falcons. It tastes great, and it is just 96 calories. Let me talk about something else for a minute, kind of interesting. I mentioned before, Falcons playing without Devontae Freeman on Sunday, also playing without tight end Austin Hooper as well, and that's where the storyline gets a little bit interesting here. Ian Rappaport from the NFL Network Rap Sheet on Twitter, letting it be known from his perspective, based on his sources, that Austin Hooper going to miss a month. Here's what Rap Sheet writes. Update on the MCL sprain suffered by the Falcons signing Austin Hooper. He's expected to be out about a month, the source said. Not great news for the NFL's leader in catches at his position. However, while Ian Rappaport is saying that about Austin Hooper's status, Dan Quinn, when asked about that, is this true? Is he really going to miss a month? Quinn kind of pushes back on this. Here is what Dan Quinn said in response to the notion that Hooper may be gone for a month. Here's Quinn.
Are you guys expecting Austin to miss a month's worth of time?
A month, did you say?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, not from our building.
So very interesting from Quinn saying a month. That did not come from our building. So pretty clearly, kind of, I don't know, downplaying the sourcing of Ian Rappaport on this. Rap Sheet, also worth pointing out, has the one that originally reported the Devontae Freeman trade possibility, which supposedly, according to Rappaport, the Falcons decided not to do. So you can kind of connect all this together. How well does Rappaport know what's going on in the Atlanta Falcons right now? But Dan Quinn says the whole idea of this being a month for Austin Hooper, that didn't come from us. He's downplaying the notion that Hooper will be out that long. Tough to win this Sunday without him, but I guess maybe good news with the fact that Quinn's opening the door for him to return sooner than what the NFL Network guy is reporting?
Well, really good news. Hoop is a Pro Bowl tight end. This year, he's as good a tight end as I've seen in the National Football League. But what's really happening here is there's so much speculation, from the outside. It's easy to do all that stuff when you're in the situation the Falcons are. Hooper is just a beast, and it's going to be tough for the Falcons, without him. But on the other end of the spectrum, I'm good with Devontae Freeman. Free, you chilling, man. You don't. Matter of fact, Free, you ain't got to make the trip. We got Hill. You ain't got to make this trip, Free. I mean,
very different feelings with the two Falcons injuries right now.
We good, Free.
Well, I think Tony Name on YouTube brings up a pretty interesting point. He says no Austin Hooper, which the Falcons won't have on Sunday, is going to expose Dirk Cutter and his lack of ability to adapt. I don't see the Falcons converting over 25% on third downs. Do you think that Hooper for Cutter is a safety blanket right now that's going to make it harder on him to call an effective game plan? Obviously, we know what a weapon Hooper is, the tight end position, and I think this is true. As Rappaport said, maybe the premier guy at his spot right now. The lack of that, how much extra pressure does that put on Dirk Cutter from a play calling standpoint?
Well, I think it puts more pressure on Matt Ryan. Matt seems to like him as a safety valve, but I think this is even bigger. This is something I want to talk about here. We saw this last week. Comes out of the backfield, scores a touchdown. Get him in the game. We rarely ever see swing passes, angle routes that can go to Hill. But I think this is about execution. To me, you got Julio, you got Ridley. It's more about the offensive line. But no question, who wouldn't want to have, in my opinion, the best tight end in the NFC?
Yeah,
Hooper.
right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's more, from my standpoint, it's more on the players. Offense. Don't get pushed behind the chains, right? Don't make it 3rd and 15. You understand what I'm saying? All those little things will help. So, of course, there's nothing else you can say. It's going to makes the offensive coordinator's job a little bit harder, but you got other playmakers.
Well, with that in mind, let me let you hear one more from Dan Quinn here, kind of explaining his philosophy on injuries of why, from his perspective, it's better to be non-specific about how long both Hooper and Freeman are going to be out. Here is what Quinn said about that this week.
Sometimes with injuries, there's, it can be faster, so you don't want to pigeonhole a player into, okay, it's 2 weeks and they're out 4, he's not pushing it to go. That's not the case. These two guys are working as hard as they can, and if you say, he's out 6 weeks and he's back in 1, well, he must have not been that hurt. So, we're just going to make sure they'll be back out on the field when they're ready to do the things they can do. We're going to take great care of the guys. That's our number one obligation.
So Quinn says, hey, listen, if I say 2 weeks and guy's out 6, it makes people think he's loafing, or if I say it's going to be 6, ends up being 1. Right. People think we exaggerated the nature of the injury, and you understand this, I'm sure.
Hold on real quick. Yeah. Let me break down the Quinnism. Everybody talks about the Quinnism. Yeah. You know what he's really saying? None of your damn business, okay? Yeah. In a nutshell, in street terms, none of your damn business.
Right.
We're going to do what we got to do. Don't trust anything you hear. And when we're ready to put the information out, we will, and according to the rules of the National Football League. But these Ian Rappaport cats, think about it. They have the leeway to just say whatever.
Yeah.
Think about it. They don't even, to me, there's a lot of, not Ian Rappaport, but there are some of the guys that they now have basically ammo. They can just shoot it whenever they want. And they can put anything out, but the unidentified sources. Anyway. But I just went on a little rant.
Well, no, I agree with that. And I told you before, I've got my problems with the whole Devontae Freeman trade report because, to me, it makes Atlanta look bad if Atlanta had a chance to trade Freeman and didn't. This is going back to the trade deadline. So, therefore, the question you wonder is this an exaggeration of what a possibility to make the trade? Because for a guy in Freeman, who I don't think is going to be back here next year, it would obviously be foolish not to trade him if you're going to have to cut him at the end of the season. So, from that standpoint, it's kind of always been weird. However, the whole idea, though, of how long Hooper's going to be out does kind of raise a different kind of question of, you say, listen, these players in the field are not going to tank. But here's how tanking gets done in pro sports. You tell a guy who misses 2 weeks of, you're not quite ready, you need to miss 3, you need to miss 4. Assuming Atlanta doesn't win on Sunday, it does not benefit the organization to have Hooper come rushing back right now because you want him healthier later on for the games that are going to matter more. But you know who it does matter to have Hooper back as quickly as possible? It matters to Dan Quinn. And it matters to Dirk Cutter. And it matters to every one of these coaches.
And it matters to me because he's my fantasy tight end.
There you go.
Now back to you, B.
Yeah, there you go. But, this is one of those things where an embattled coach and an organization that's going to exist longer than the embattled coach, sometimes their desires and their self-interest don't properly align here. If we were to assume that the favorite team on Sunday, Carolina, wins, well, from an Atlanta standpoint, rushing Austin Hooper back there when he may not be 100% healthy, I don't know that's in the Falcons' best interest. But for Dan Quinn, who's trying to get as many wins as he can so he can sort of tout a second-half turnaround, he obviously wants that as much as he possibly can. This is an example on an injury standpoint of, is it 2 weeks, is it 3 weeks, is it 4 weeks? Quinn wants to be as quickly as he can, but for the organization who should be thinking about what's the best for 2020, rushing Hooper back, I don't know if that makes a ton of sense.
Q is saying, all hands on deck. I'm drowning and y'all throw me a life vest out there, and that's Hooper. I need all I can get. So
yeah.
I agree with you on that. But one thing I will say that, you said something when you said about Hooper coming back too early. You lean on caution right here. I'm going to lean on caution too. As far even no matter what, aside from what we're talking about with Dan Quinn in survival mode, I'm still leaning on caution with him, no matter what. So, you can't rush him. When he's healthy to go, he should go. Not come out there and try to, play on an injury. This ain't like Jack Youngblood, 1979 Super Bowl, playing with a broken leg. So I'm waiting. I agree with you on that.
Mom Spaghetti on YouTube says, hey, what do you guys think about what happened to Myles Garrett last night? So we're going to talk about that, especially this guy. I'm dying to hear what Chuck thinks about how the league came down hard on Garrett for throwing the helmet, hitting Mason Rudolph with the helmet last night. So we're going to get to that here coming up in a moment. We got actually a couple pretty interesting stories kind of outside the boundaries of the Falcons we're going to do before we get there. Before that, though, it is AJC Falcons News Now. My name is Brandon Adams. This is the former Falcon Chuck Smith. And if you like the coverage that you get of the Falcons each week at AJC.com, the best way to get even more in-depth coverage than that is by becoming an AJC subscriber. Now, the website you see on your screen, subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now, will give you all those choices. You can get 7-day home delivery. You can get the daily e-paper sent right to your device. You can get a combination of the two with the Sunday delivery and the e-paper. There's just a lot of different options for you to go with. You can cancel anytime. But when you do sign up to be an AJC subscriber, as a special thank you to you, how about this officially licensed, branded Atlanta Falcons cooler? Special thank you for becoming an AJC subscriber. The AJC is a proud partner of the Atlanta Falcons. One of the ways that we show that off is by giving you a chance to be the proud owner of this cooler. But you got to become a subscriber to the AJC. Subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now for more details on that. Let's now talk about the situation with the Falcons defense. And we said before, this Atlanta defense was really very, very clean a week ago, getting to the quarterback in a way that had not been done any this season. They almost matched their entire season's worth of sack totals on Sunday. More communication, better communication in the backfield, with Jeff Ulbrich calling the action on first and second down, Raheem Morris apparently calling the action on third down, Dan Quinn saying, I'm still in charge, though. These guys are doing all this stuff, but I'm still in charge. One way or another, this committee of minds working on this defense, it worked a week ago. Does it work again on Sunday? Does the increased responsibility for Ulbrich, which I guess probably predates the win against the Saints, let's say the switch for Raheem Morris from offense to defense, does that provide a catalyst for Atlanta again on Sunday in your mind?
I'll say yes, and I think the Falcons can do it again. Now, one point to make at the Falcons, the offense had 4 drives or 10 plays or more within itself, so they kept the ball, and you had better opportunities to rush the passer because the Falcons were doing what?
Yeah.
They were scoring.
Right.
So now, here's just a couple of things I want our fans to notice that are watching right now. On defense, one of the adjustments that Dan Quinn made, Grady Jarrett and Adrian Claiborne were always on the right side.
Okay.
That's where Grady's strength. All right, number 2, Dan reduced the pass rushers down. Instead of being 5 yards wide, you'll notice that Vic Beasley was 1.5 yards, right? 1.5 yards outside the tackle. Another thing you notice when it comes to what the Falcons did, Vic Beasley and Tack McKinley were down in 3-point stances, which they haven't done in years.
Yeah.
So those kind of adjustments, those are things I want you to notice, Falcon fans, as when you watch this game, you'll see that's the adjustments they made. Now, if they do that again, they'll have success on defense.
Okay, good to hear. Now, as far as Raheem Morris, he did talk this week about his new responsibilities and said that in some cases, people like me talking to a microphone for a living, we like drama, coaching drama. We really like that. things like this just provide a certain level of intrigue that's enjoyable. But from Morris's standpoint, a lot of this may be too much made of his switch from offense to defense and the way that these responsibilities are being divided up. Let's let you hear Raheem Morris on that point.
A lot was made of that. When you plan it, you all plan it together. So we plan all the same things. It's just a person reading off the sheet. We did a nice job of working together and working for each other. I just think that was probably the most helpful part. Bouncing ideas off each other, all of us, and going to work and having a successful game. It was fun.
That's obviously what Morris says, that, listen, that they're all kind of working in this in communication and cooperation with each other. But listen, somebody leaked it to Steve Weish, who was doing one on first and second down, who was doing one on third down. So hard not to pay attention to for the win last Sunday against New Orleans and whatever may happen here on this upcoming Sunday. Hard not to notice certain people trying to take some credit for some of that, which I guess it's just human nature, right? I mean, to a degree, right. It's just human nature to want to be credited for the turnaround, right?
Yeah. I mean, you'd like to see the entire staff take credit because that's ultimately how it works. But to me, the question is, and I mean, I like Raheem and everything, and, Raheem's a good dude, but are you like kind of clowning everybody when you say in the last 2 years you've been a wide receiver coach and now you're the DB coach? There are questions to be asked about that because why you wasn't there, Right. So I like the move, and I credit Dan Quinn. I gave Dan Quinn a game ball last week.
I thought that's a really good point. I'm glad you're bringing this up.
Yeah, for him doing that.
Yeah.
But, they should have did it earlier. Raheem is a defensive back coach. They were struggling. And here's nothing now. I'm not in camps. I'm not in the facility. Yeah. So I'm sure they all work together. So when you're a staff, you all work together. They all say, hey, everybody's got to be rowing in the same direction.
Right.
So the O-line coach will help the D-line coach. The D-line coach will help, and it works like that when you're at the table.
I want to restate this because you're the only person I've heard that made this point. I think it's a very good one. You gave your game ball for the win against the Saints to Quinn because Quinn, I'm going to describe it this way, lessened his ego to share responsibilities with other people. And I've said it a million times. Quinn really has no incentive to do this because if things get better, it's Raheem Morris who gets the credit. It's Jeff Ulbrich who gets the credit. Quinn, by lessening the responsibility, given how bad things are, all he's doing is setting up the stage for someone else to then get the credit for those performances, which really you kind of saw that play out. Raheem Morris was congratulated by certain players and kind of on and on it goes. But this may be an instance where Quinn truly did choose to do what was best for the team, even though, personally, he's got nothing to gain for this. At the end of the season, a better defensive performance of the second half will not be credited to him. Read, columnists in the AJC. Listen to our commenters in the show. No one's going to say defense got better. Boy, Dan Quinn, good job. No, they're going to say defense got better. Dan Quinn took his hands off of it. So I know a lot of Falcons fans, Quinn's not the most popular guy with you right now, but Chuck said this on Monday, and it's true. His willingness to give responsibility and therefore credit over to somebody else, I think is actually a pretty noble thing to do in a roundabout way.
Yeah, he showed humility, man.
Yeah.
And then he showed he was wrong. Think about this from Dan Quinn's standpoint. He knew when he made that decision publicly, he was going to get torched.
Yeah.
He was going to everybody was going to come down on him and say, wow, we thought so. Maybe Dan's not this and Dan's not that. So to me, it does show a lot of humbleness and also, he doesn't really have a big ego. That's what it says to me because he's willing, knowing that in the building he's accepting responsibility that we haven't been doing well, that I can't handle that. Think about it.
Yeah.
He threw not only just to Atlanta fans, he threw himself at the table of the NFL media. Everybody said, you know what? At this table, I need to take myself out of that role, and this is where I need to sit at the top instead of sitting on the side with the assistants.
Yeah.
And knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
But it was for the betterment of the team, and no matter what you feel and the way you look at it, he absolutely, to me, did the right thing, and he should be commended for that instance. Now, other things that you want to get mad about, that's there. But for this one situation, we wouldn't have won the game against New Orleans if that's the case.
Anthony Bell wants to talk about Myles Garrett, so we'll do that. It's AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite, the official beer of the Atlanta Falcons. It tastes great, and it's just 96 calories. Enjoy some this weekend as you're sitting around with friends, watching the Falcons and the Panthers. And by the way, while you're doing that, tell them to tune in and check us out every Monday and Friday at 1 p.m. here for AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. It's certainly going to be a good time watching a little football, as it always is, each and every NFL Sunday. Not a good time for the league last night, though. Cleveland gets a great win. As you said before, what had been a red-hot Steelers team, big divisional game, I was really looking forward to this, marred at the end by a vicious attack by Myles Garrett on Steelers quarterback Mason Rudolph. Great work here by our video team led by Michael Carvel, getting the still frame image of Rudolph being hit by the helmet here from Garrett. The league comes down hard on Garrett. A number of the other guys are around this also dealing with some suspensions there as well. But Garrett suspended indefinitely, which is going to mean at least the rest of this season and the playoffs. Jay Glazer is reporting that Garrett will have to basically go to Roger Goodell and have a conversation with him about maybe even being reinstated for the 2020 season.
Right.
So very aggressive punishment as expected for Myles Garrett on the heels of this. The Cleveland Browns have issued a statement. Their owner, Jimmy Haslam, who, listen, he's got his own problems from day to day, kind of speaking out about this. They put that out on Twitter, basically acknowledging the fact that this was not a good situation. You see the Browns tweet there, and of course the statement from Haslam, came with that. I thought Baker Mayfield was really well spoken about this after the game. And I don't like Mayfield. I never have. Speaking as a fan of football, I've never liked Baker Mayfield. But the fact that he condemned this on the spot shows that at least in this one area, I think that Mayfield gets it. I thought this was an ugly moment for the NFL. To me, this was their version of the Malice at the Palace. And I'm not the only one to say that here today. The Ron Artest brawl, going back to the Pacers and the Pistons in the NBA a few years ago. I thought this was as ugly as that, at least close to it anyway, in terms of Myles Garrett. You're a former player. You also played a similar position the way that Garrett plays as a pass rusher. What did you think about it?
Well, first thing I thought about is not the Malice in the Palace. He didn't run in the stands and they weren't beating up fans. So that's just my opinion.
Okay.
I think every NFL player is a tick away from making some kind of decision that can change the course of their career. Years ago, Albert Haynesworth stomped on Grove's head when he was in Tennessee. A lot of people might not remember that. But I just think, man, it was one of those things that it was an ugly situation. Myles Garrett's going to have to carry this for a long time.
Yeah.
And when everyone kind of forgets about it from their teams, they always remember Myles Garrett for what he ended up doing.
Yeah.
And the one thing I don't like what everybody's saying is, oh, he's such a cool guy, he's laid back. It's not in his personality.
Yeah.
Come on, man. We know that all the time. People explode and lose their composure, particularly in situations like that. It was ugly. I thought it was real whack. But I'm going to tell you back, like, when we played, people would actually fight and get in squab on stuff like this if it was the right guy. When you'd see him in the nightclub or you see him in the tunnel.
Sure.
You really, in the old days, it was a little different, man. Guys would actually take this up at another time.
Well, I used to spend a lot of time at Falcons training camp back in a previous life, and this is not just true for the Falcons, it's true for any NFL team. When it's 100 degrees out there in July, you used to practice long enough, two guys are going to end up pushing and shoving, right? There's going to be a punch thrown. That's just the way that goes. Football is an aggressive sport. And if I were to come out on your practice field where you're working with some pass rushers, and if two guys are competing and they kind of spills off and becomes something different, and all of a sudden a punch or two gets thrown, I'm not scandalized by that. You're not scandalized by that. You grab them by the back of the neck, you pull them off, and you get them back in line, you go start playing again. I'm not scandalized by a fight. I don't care that Myles Garrett fought Mason Rudolph, tried to fight him or anything like that. I don't care about that. I just think in life, when you use a weapon, in this particular instance coming down overhead on top of Rudolph's head, a helmet is a weapon in that case. And this is true to me in a bar, on a football field, in your backyard, wherever else. If you get in a fight and use a weapon, you're a bad guy. Unless you are defending your life, using a weapon in a fight makes you a bad guy. Fist fight, pull you off, go back about your business, see you in the club later on, everybody's fine with that. You use a weapon, you're a bad guy.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but this guy's not a bad guy for life just because you made this decision. I understand what you're saying, but you're saying he's a bad guy, but he's a guy who made a terrible decision.
Yeah.
But is he going to have to be a bad guy? He's 25 for the next 25 years?
I'm not saying he should never play again. I'm just saying.
No, I'm not saying. Does he carry a label forever?
With me, he does.
So
you use a weapon. Look, this would be disqualification in professional wrestling. I
understand that, but my thing is, I totally get it. Suspend him for a year, suspend him for 2 years. But at the end of the day, when the man's 45 years old, has changed his life, see, to me, Brandon, that's kind of like the side of football, the folks that. How do you judge some cat? Again, it's terrible, but for the rest of his life, he's a bad dude for you to say that? So I know you know somebody that's gotten a DUI. I know you know somebody that's gotten arrested. So that makes them a bad guy for the rest of their life? I totally disagree with you on that.
So hear what I'm saying, though. I'm not saying he should never play again. I'm fine with him playing in 2020.
But you labeling this guy a bad guy when people grow, people go to prison, come out, go to college, and they're able to what? Resurrect their lives. But this cat, he's a bad guy forever?
For using a weapon in a fight, man, that's not what a good guy does, Chuck. It's not what a good guy does.
Right.
And I'm all about, the emotion of the moment and all that kind of stuff. I'm just saying, and your point earlier about, well, it's not the malice in the palace because fans weren't involved, and that's a good point. You're right. This thing didn't spill into the stadium, so it's a little bit different there in that regard. But what makes it severe, and the reason why it's like national news, even for people who are not football fans, is because of the presence of the weapon, the helmet being used as a weapon here in this instance. And frankly, there was a lot of dirty play, I thought, from Cleveland this game last night, but that's probably more that needs to be said on that. But it's the presence of the helmet as a weapon is what makes it national news. If an open fist hits Rudolph in the jaw, that's a football thing, but for the most part, the Today Show's not talking about it. But you let a helmet come across and be used as a weapon in the right circumstances. And I'm not trying to be over dramatize this. You can kill somebody with a helmet. I mean, that helmet you brought in here before, the helmet's now not quite as heavy as that. You come down hard enough over top, you can kill somebody with that. I mean, he's actually lucky that Rudolph wasn't more hurt than he was.
Well, he wasn't hurt then. He wasn't more hurt. So here we go. Now we're adding other stuff in to make him a bad guy. So the kid made a terrible decision. He absolutely was wrong for what he did. But for me to label this cat a bad guy forever when we seen guys do worse things, okay, he made a mistake. He hit him. No. But the guy didn't get hit in the face. So now you're saying you're adding things in that aren't really related to what happened.
But you and Shearer Floyd both are putting words in my mouth that I didn't say. I didn't say he cannot change. Honestly,
you just said he's a bad guy for life in your eyes. You said that.
Using a weapon in a fight to me makes you a bad guy.
For life.
No, you're the one that says for life.
You said that. I said is he back?
I don't know anything about the rest
Don't make
of my life.
me get rewind that tape, bro. Don't make me do it now, okay? Because you just said that, and I challenge you saying people commit crimes, man. Real crime.
Well, if this wasn't on the football field, this would be a crime.
But people commit assaults.
This was an assault. I mean,
I'm saying people in the streets right now commit assault. And am I condoning that?
Yeah.
Heck no. But golly, they don't have to carry for the next two. I'm 50 years old. Here's something. I hit a dude in the helmet with a helmet. I hit a guy in the helmet with the Falcons. It wasn't on TV. But am I supposed to? I'm a totally different guy than I was.
Right, and
I'm a totally different guy, and but
listen, I grant you that Myles Garrett can change. Now, I'll never meet Myles Garrett, so I won't know if he changes or not. I mean, here's the fact of the matter is, when you do something on national television like this, it's going to cloud the perception, because I'll never meet Garrett. I'll never be in the same place with him. So if he changes for the better, I'll never know. But this was a cheap shot in a fight, a dirty move. Right. And so from that standpoint, this will be all I ever know about Myles Garrett, a guy that uses a weapon in a fight.
Okay, well, let me say this then. You just talked about a bad guy for life. I ain't heard nobody talk about Ray Lewis and his murders. Ray Lewis, hold on. You saying the guy can't change. Ray Lewis changed. Ray Lewis is revered now in America. Ray Lewis is looked at as a positive guy now. Ray Lewis, literally in Buckhead, 2 decades ago, there was a murder there. He went to trial.
Allegedly.
Ray Lewis is on trial for murder. So you telling me this? Ray Lewis has cleaned himself up.
This is not as bad as that, first of all.
Enough said then. I ain't got nothing else to say.
This is not as bad as that.
You asked about it ain't as bad? It's not.
Yeah, not even close. But this is not a good look for the NFL. There's a reason why they came down as swiftly and harshly as they did. It's not a good look for Myles Garrett. He's going to have to go through a personal PR campaign on this.
Yep. Yeah. Listen, it's gonna follow him that he made this decision, but eventually. Look, man, all that stuff fades over time, man. It does. It all fades over time, and people move on. Look, even from the negativity of the Patriots, which it wasn't a violent hit, nobody even talks about all that anymore.
Sure.
So all the negative that's come, some of it just fade.
So why don't we talk about a less controversial subject like Colin Kaepernick for a minute? It's AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. By the way, subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now. A great way to get this officially branded Falcons cooler when you become a subscriber. Lots of different choices there. And AJC, a proud partner of the Falcons. You can check that out there, and you can get that when you go to the website subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now. All right, here's the news. We'll get a couple of opinions on this.
Right.
Not apparently, this is going to happen. Tomorrow, former 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick is going to have a workout at the Falcons facility. Now, the Falcons are not running the workout, but they will apparently have a scout there, according to Dan Quinn.
Hugh Jackson's running it.
Okay. Oh, it was
asked. He was going to be overseeing them.
All right, good stuff. Workout. So this is what Quinn said about the Kaepernick workout when he spoke to the reporters here this week.
And I guess maybe an analogy would be like we're going to have the workout here, but we're not the ones that are running the workout, but it's a league workout. So I'd say the analogy I would say is, the combine's at the Colts, but they don't run the combine. And so that'd be my best analogy for you. But I'm sure there'll be turnout from other clubs as well. But
do y'all plan on having a representative there?
I'm sure that we will. No scout likes a workout better than a scout, or who likes a workout better than a scout? Nobody. So I'm sure most teams will have people around. If you had a workout, there might be somebody that would show. Maybe.
So Quinn says, listen, scouts love workouts. They're going to be there for the Colin Kaepernick workout. Interesting that it's going to be where we are here in Atlanta. Also interesting the fact that it kind of comes up so quickly out of nowhere. I think the Kaepernick camp seems to have been putting it out there in the media that for their taste it came up a little too quickly, not on Tuesdays when these kinds of workouts typically might take place. I'm not sure why that matters. On short notice, which I can certainly understand why that might matter. However, his representatives say that he's been in shape now for a long time, ready for precisely this moment. So clearly he's embracing this, even though if the way that it came about, at least in some circles, has been described as a bit weird. What do you make of this overall? Kaepernick maybe getting another chance here? Is this window dressing? Is the league really interested in evaluating him as a quarterback again? Is this a token gesture? From your perspective, what do you think of what's going on here with Kaepernick?
Well, I describe it as being whack. I think the NFL, number one, I think the NFL has set him up to fail. I think the NFL put him in a situation, let me tell you, they put him in a situation where what is he going to say? No. Mm-hmm. And then if he says no, everybody can say, oh, the NFL gave him a shot, but he didn't take advantage of it, right? So now, the NFL, when he does the workout, guess what they say now? We gave him a shot. So it's two shots. Number one, we gave him a shot. If he turns it down, guess what? Everybody's on him. Yeah. And if we give him a shot and nobody takes him, now it clears our slate. Mm-hmm. So to me, some of this, and this is just me speculating, I think some of this has to do with Jay-Z, who was at one time a huge Colin Kaepernick guy. Now Jay-Z, they got all this, we're trying to, balance the power. We're trying to be, pro player. And we're trying to get rid of all the different things that divided the NFL and divided communities.
So for people who are not aware, Jay-Z, I guess, has some sort of marketing agreement with the NFL now, helping with the halftime show for the Super Bowl and things like that.
Yeah, they got Jay-Z like a modern-day Gandhi, like he can fix everything. Listen, Jay-Z, again, this is
Listen, if you can get Beyonce to marry you, then you've pretty clearly got away with words.
Jay-Z Jigga got some skills now. I know about that,
So at this stage of the game, having been out of football now for a little while, what do you think of Kaepernick as a player right now?
I think he's absolutely bad, a bad man when he gets on the field. But
not bad meaning bad, but bad meaning good, as they once said in the
Run DMC. Look at Brandon. Hey, that's Peter Piper. I'm old school DJ. Hey, you showed me something.
There you go. I appreciate that. So you think he can still play?
I think he could play for the Steelers tomorrow. If you seen Mason Rudolph last night, if we wasn't talking about what happened with the head, getting hit on the head.
You're talking about, that's a really good point.
That was the worst quarterback playing I've seen this year.
It's actually, that's a really good point. We'll get back to Kaepernick in a second. Yeah. Mason Rudolph getting hit in the head with a helmet takes a lot of pressure on the fact that Mason Rudolph lost himself the Steelers quarterback job last night. That's a really good point.
That is terrible, but I just think Cap can still play, and under circumstances, I hate when people say, like I just did. So to me, I just disappointed myself on something that I usually don't say. Let me tell you, what I usually say is people always say, well, there's so many bad quarterbacks out there that Cap should play. Cap can play. Cap is a quarterback that can run the ball. He's the perfect fit for quarterbacks now, in the new NFL with all the spread stuff. So I just think he can play, and it's not as much about, the other guys are sorry. But in Pittsburgh's case, they sorry as hell, though.
So what do you make of the argument that I think sometimes with Kaepernick does not get enough consideration? The fact that he may be better than some of the 32 of the league's backups. In fact, he probably is better than at least some of the backups around the league and could maybe compete for a starting job in certain instances. However, when you couple him with the attention that comes along with him, and from my perspective, some of that attention is negative. when you couple him with that attention, that's the kind of thing that NFL teams just don't want to deal with. That there is an argument out there that Kaepernick is not being blackballed by the league, kicked out of the league. Kaepernick has been rejected by the league because for the level of play that he brings to the table, there's just too much baggage. What do you make of that?
Well, I think teams don't want distraction, but I guess they'll take it if they need a player in that position. What's the kid's name that was playing last night? I can't remember, for the Cleveland Browns. That was spelling the Cleveland Browns.
But you're right, there are lots of problems. There are lots of problems.
What is his name? He left Kansas City.
Yeah. I mean,
I can't
Kareem
think of
Hunt.
his name. Yeah, Kareem Hunt.
Yeah.
Man, Kareem Hunt, look what he did. Okay, look at what's his name? The cheetah playing with Kansas City.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are committing real crimes.
Yeah.
Right? Antonio Brown had been accused of rape, and he was going to be on the team. So I understand the negativity behind Kaepernick, but to me, it starts with Jerry Jones. To me, Jerry Jones is the polarizing figure behind this. He said, remember, Jerry Jones, he's the one who broke this whole entire thing.
Yeah.
He's the one who went out there and said, I stood with them. He broke basically the entire player thing and said, there's no need for y'all to stand again. We're going to start doing what? We're going to start taking your money and cutting you guys. So Jerry Jones in the NFL, you know what? I think of what he said. I think right now, from a political standpoint, I think the climate that we're in, and let me tell you the biggest reason, in my opinion, why Colin Kaepernick is not playing. Because the President of America, the President of the United States, built a platform on telling that people that this is a bad man. Everybody. He told everybody. So think about this. When the president tweets, how many millions of people get to see it? Okay. So to me, it starts with Jerry Jones on a smaller level. Then it starts with Donald Trump and the American government getting involved in the issue that should have been basically an NFL issue and from the standpoint of a PR, but the president made it his personal issue.
Is it fair to say, though, that Kaepernick was unpopular with a lot of people, though, before Trump got involved, though, right? Being a politician, you sometimes gravitate towards where you think there's already, an opportunity to make some hay. Kaepernick was unpopular with a lot of people before Trump got involved, though, right?
Well, yeah, he was unpopular, but it is what it is. He wasn't unpopular with black people. I mean, let's call it like it is. I didn't know not one black person that didn't stand for injustice in our communities who could relate. But somebody on the other side started saying, "Oh, wow, he's disrespectful to our special forces and all those kind of people.
Police officers,
servicemen, police officers and everything."
Yeah.
So to me, it was divided by a little bit by race. And if people don't think it wasn't, why was it all black guys taking the knee for the majority? It was 99.9% of black guys, and every once in a while, a white guy would take a knee.
Do you think that Colin Kaepernick plays in the NFL again?
Man, that's a tough one. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just so crazy. Like I said, there's so many narratives involved from the president to, what he did to Jerry Jones is to, just the community, the sponsors. To me, I don't know. But I'll tell you this, from what I heard about like this weekend, you're doing it on a Saturday?
Yeah.
You're doing it not, they wouldn't let them do it on a Tuesday?
Yeah. Well, Jacob O'Neill brought that up in our comment section, and we'll move off this after this. But the idea that it's at a time when coaches and GMs couldn't be there, apart from the controversy that, Kaepernick is kind of, courted here in the lightning rod that his name is. Can scouts make the proper evaluation here? Does it require a coach and a GM to be there? So your thoughts on that real quick.
I think it does. I think, Brandon, you need to have coaches and GMs there, but the good thing is they're going to take the film. He's got an opportunity. Whether I like the way it happened or not, I'm glad he's getting an opportunity just to do anything, because I'd hate for it to just fade. He never got a shot. So at least now his name is right now out there. And I think there's an opportunity, maybe not this. I think his opportunity is going to come after this with other teams bringing them in for private workouts.
No, we'll see how that goes. It's AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. A very, very interesting slate of games on tap for Week 11. Let's preview a few of these as we get ready to say goodbye to you here on this official Friday of AJC Falcons News Now. Game I'm probably more interested in than any other on Sunday is right there at the top of your card there. How about Deshaun Watson against Lamar Jackson? This may not only be one of the best games of this Sunday, it could quite possibly be a precursor of the next Manning Brady. Remember when Manning and Brady played every year and it was like the showcase of quarterbacks? Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson may be that in the future. That's an incredible game.
Lamar Jackson, my sons argue with me every day that he's better than Mike Vick. The millennials, man. I mean, he's their version of Mike Vick, and we really go over it. I'm like, Vick is that guy, but I can't argue when I saw what he did last week.
You see bounce back opportunities for Dallas going to Detroit, for New Orleans going to Tampa Bay. Keep your mind on that. Miami been playing a little bit better as of late. When you start looking at some of the other games, also a bounce back opportunity for San Francisco. Having lost in Seattle on Monday Night Football, they'll get a chance with the Arizona Cardinals. Eagles and Patriots, also an interesting game. A lot of folks think this is easy for New England, kind of coming off a loss, coming off a bye. Is it that simple when it comes to the Patriots here in this spot?
Yeah, they got Tom Brady. They're focused, they're motivated, and I still think they're the best team in football.
Chicago and LA, a primetime game for you, and then you think about Kansas City and the Chargers going to Monday night. So interesting stuff going on there around Week 11 for the National Football League. You think the Falcons get it done on Sunday?
The Falcons are going to win. The Falcons are going on the road. Remember, I told you that now.
That's right. When it happens, Chuck Smith's the
Call
one that
me
said
out
it.
the next week, Falcon fans.
Huge thanks to Miller Lite for making AJC Falcons News Now sponsored by Miller Lite possible. Y'all enjoy the Falcons and the Panthers on Sunday. We will back here to talk more about it on Monday, 1 p.m. AJC Falcons News Now sponsored by Miller Lite. Y'all have a great weekend. We'll look forward to seeing you then.